You are an ancient human. No bathroom, no shower, no soap sitting in a little dish by the sink. No deodorant, no dry shampoo, no wet wipes, no face wash, no toothbrush, no mouthwash, no product of any kind that a modern person would recognize as belonging to a hygiene routine. You have been moving with your group for days across open terrain. You slept on the ground last night. Before that, you helped butcher an animal. Before that, you were digging in soil for roots. Before that, you were sweating under the sun for the better part of 6 hours trying to run something down. You have not bathed in any formal sense of the word. There has been no opportunity, no dedicated time, no dedicated place. And yet, here is the question nobody actually asks when they imagine this scene. Did you smell bad? And the follow-up question, which is even more interesting, did you care? Because we tend to assume the answer to the first question is yes, obviously, and the answer to the second is no, obviously. We imagine ancient humans as uniformly grimy, uniformly pungent, completely indifferent to their own cleanliness in ways that separate them from us as decisively as the invention of indoor plumbing. The image of the dirty, smelly, blissfully unaware cave dweller is so deeply embedded in popular culture that it feels less like an assumption and more like an established fact. It is not an established fact. It is a guess. And it is, in several important and genuinely surprising ways, wrong. Today we are going deep into the question of what ancient humans actually did about hygiene, before civilization, before soap, before anything we would recognize as a formal cleaning practice. We are going to find out what the evidence really says about whether they groomed, whether they bathed, whether they cared about how they smelled, and what all of that tells us about the humans who lived before the world we recognize had any of its familiar furniture in place. This one is going to change how you think about what it means to be clean. Let's start with the assumption that needs to be questioned before anything else in this video makes sense. The assumption is that hygiene, caring about cleanliness, taking deliberate steps to clean the body, avoiding filth and parasites, is a product of civilization. That it required the invention of soap, or public baths, or at minimum, the development of settled communities with access to reliable water sources before it became a meaningful part of human behavior. This assumption feels logical. Modern hygiene practices are clearly products of civilization. Soap, shampoo, deodorant, toothbrushes, running water, sewage systems, all of these are inventions of the civilized world. If you strip all of those things away, surely what you're left with is people who simply didn't bother with cleanliness because they had no means or motivation to pursue it. The problem is that this assumption confuses the tools of hygiene with the instinct for hygiene. And those are two very different things operating on two very different timescales. Hygiene as a behavioral instinct, the impulse to clean the body, remove parasites, avoid contact with things likely to cause disease, and maintain some baseline of bodily cleanliness, did not originate with civilization. It originated millions of years before civilization, in the evolutionary pressures that shaped every social animal that has ever existed. And the evidence that this is true is sitting right there in the behavior of virtually every other mammal species on the planet. Every mammal grooms, every social primate grooms extensively, both themselves and each other. Chimpanzees spend hours every day in mutual grooming, running fingers through each other's fur, removing parasites, cleaning wounds, maintaining each other's skin and hair in a state that minimizes ectoparasite load and infection risk. Gorillas do it. Bonobos do it. Baboons, macaques, marmosets, every social primate species studied shows the same basic pattern of grooming as a central social and hygienic behavior. This is not cultural behavior. It is not learned from civilization. It is evolutionary behavior shaped by the very direct selection pressure that parasites create. An animal that doesn't groom accumulates lice, ticks, mites, and other ectoparasites that cause infection, drain energy, and reduce survival. Over millions of years, evolution has consistently favored animals, with strong grooming instincts because those animals survive longer and reproduce more successfully. The instinct to clean the body is one of the oldest behavioral adaptations in the mammalian lineage. ancient humans did not lose that instinct when they became human. They inherited it directly from primate ancestors who had been refining it for tens of millions of years. The question is not whether ancient humans had any impulse toward hygiene. They absolutely did. The question is what form that impulse took in a world where its only available tools were hands, water, and whatever the natural environment provided. Let's talk about what ancient humans were actually dealing with physically. Because understanding the specific hygiene challenges of ancient life is essential for understanding the specific solutions that would have developed in response. The single most pressing physical hygiene concern for ancient humans was not odor. It was not dirt in the general aesthetic sense that we think of it today. It was parasites. Ancient humans were infested with parasites in ways that are difficult for modern people to fully appreciate. Lice were essentially universal. Head lice fossils and eggs have been found in ancient human remains going back tens of thousands of years. And body lice, which are distinct from head lice and appear to have evolved specifically in association with human clothing, developed approximately 170,000 years ago as humans began wearing animal skins. Beyond lice, ancient humans dealt with intestinal worms, skin mites, ticks, fleas, and a variety of other organisms that lived on or in the human body and caused everything from minor irritation to serious illness and death. These parasites were not just uncomfortable, they were genuinely dangerous. Body lice in particular are vectors for several serious diseases including typhus, relapsing fever, and trench fever. An ancient human carrying a heavy louse burden was carrying a significant disease risk, particularly in cold conditions when lice move most actively between hosts. Intestinal parasites caused chronic malnutrition, weakness, and in severe infections could be fatal. Skin parasites caused wounds that could become infected in a world with no antibiotics. The evolutionary pressure to develop behaviors that reduced parasite load was therefore enormous and ancient. And the evidence suggests that ancient humans responded to that pressure in exactly the way you would expect from a highly intelligent primate with excellent manual dexterity and complex social bonds. They groomed each other, constantly, deliberately, as a central part of their social lives. The archaeological evidence for ancient grooming is limited by the simple fact that grooming behaviors do not leave fossils. But what evidence does exist is consistent and suggestive. Neanderthals, based on analysis of shell objects found at multiple European sites, appear to have used what researchers have interpreted as early tweezers or grooming tools made from shells used to pluck hair and potentially remove parasites. Early cave art, the paintings and engravings that ancient humans left in caves across Europe, Africa, and Asia, consistently depicts figures without beards or with neatly arranged hair, suggesting that deliberate grooming of body hair was practiced well before any written records exist to describe it. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer communities that still practice traditional lifestyles show that mutual grooming, sitting together, and manually removing parasites from each other's hair and skin, is a regular part of daily life. Across multiple independent hunter-gatherer groups in different parts of the world, the same basic behavior appears. Close examination of a partner's scalp, skin, and hair, removal of any parasites found, and often consumption of those parasites as a small protein source. This behavior is so consistent across geographically separated groups that it clearly reflects an ancient shared practice rather than a culturally specific invention. Ancient humans groomed each other every day, not as a ritual or a luxury, as a survival behavior, as routine, and as necessary as eating. Now let's address the question of bathing specifically, because grooming and bathing are different things, and the distinction matters. Bathing, immersing the body in water for the purpose of cleaning it, requires access to water, which ancient humans absolutely had. Hunter-gatherer communities are consistently located near water sources for the obvious reason that water is essential for survival. Rivers, lakes, streams, and natural pools were central features of ancient human landscapes, not peripheral ones. The question is whether ancient humans used those water sources for deliberate cleaning or only for drinking. Here is the honest answer. They almost certainly did both, but the nature and motivation of their water contact was different from what we think of as bathing today. Ancient humans in warm climates would have entered water regularly for practical reasons that had nothing directly to do with hygiene in a modern sense. Rivers and lakes were crossed during travel. Fish and aquatic resources were gathered from shallow water. Hot days in equatorial environments would have made water immersion naturally attractive for cooling. Children would have played in water. None of these constitute bathing in the intentional, hygiene-motivated sense of the word. But they would have produced regular water contact that incidentally cleaned the skin and hair of accumulated dirt, blood, and other substances. Whether ancient humans understood this incidental cleaning effect and deliberately sought water contact for hygiene reasons is harder to establish. What the anthropological research on modern hunter-gatherer communities suggests is interesting and somewhat counterintuitive. Studies have found that regular deliberate bathing, immersing the body in water specifically for cleaning purposes as a routine practice, is not consistently documented in traditional hunter-gatherer communities that have maintained isolation from the broader world. When it appears in those communities, researchers often note signs of outside influence, such as access to soap or shampoo introduced through contact with settled populations. This finding, while surprising at first glance, actually makes sense when you think about what body odor is and where it comes from. Modern humans develop significant body odor when they don't bathe regularly because of a specific interaction between bacteria and sweat. Sweat itself barely smells. The distinctive odor associated with unwashed bodies comes from bacteria that live on the skin, consuming compounds in sweat and releasing odorous byproducts as they do so. The bacteria that produce the most distinctive odors are fed heavily by the sugars and compounds found in processed foods and refined carbohydrates, the dietary staples of modern civilization. Ancient humans eating a diet of wild game, gathered plants, roots, and seasonal fruits had a significantly different metabolic profile, and their sweat would have fed those bacteria differently, producing less of the compounds that modern people associate with unwashed bodies. This is a remarkable thing to sit with for a moment. Ancient humans may not have smelled particularly bad by their own standards or even by ours. Not because they bathed more than we might assume, but because their bodies produced different compounds that created a very different olfactory signature. The extreme body odor that modern humans develop without regular bathing is at least partly a product of the modern diet, of the high sugar, highly processed foods that feed odor-producing bacteria in ways that a hunter-gatherer diet simply didn't. Here is something that makes the picture even more interesting, and it comes from a completely unexpected angle. Ancient humans had strong reasons to actively want to manage their smell, but those reasons had nothing to do with social embarrassment or personal fastidiousness. They had to do with hunting. The most important practical reason for an ancient hunter to want to control their body odor was that prey animals could smell them. A downwind hunter carrying a heavy human scent was a much less effective hunter than one who had managed their odor profile. This is not speculation. Modern hunters in many parts of the world still practice scent management, using methods ranging from bathing in smoke to rubbing the body with plants that mask or modify human scent, specifically to improve hunting success. Evidence that ancient humans used similar practices exists in the form of ochre and other plant materials found at ancient sites, some of which have properties that would modify the chemical profile of human body odor. The deliberate application of substances to the body, for purposes that included scent modification, is documented in the archaeological record well before any formal concept of hygiene as we understand it today. What this tells us is something significant. Ancient humans were thinking about what they smelled like. Not necessarily for social or aesthetic reasons in the modern sense, but in the practical, survival-oriented framework of people whose lives depended on hunting success, managing their olfactory signature was a real and important concern. The instinct behind modern hygiene and the instinct behind this ancient scent management are the same instinct. The awareness that the body has an odor that matters, that it can be modified, and that modifying it has practical benefits. The tools and the context are completely different. The underlying human behavior of paying attention to and managing how the body smells connects directly from ancient hunters rubbing plant material on their skin to modern humans applying deodorant before leaving the house. Let's talk about the specific evidence that ancient humans were not the indifferent to cleanliness creatures that popular imagery suggests, because the evidence is more extensive than most people expect, and it comes from multiple independent directions. The first line of evidence is dental. Ancient human teeth show wear patterns and residues that tell us something about oral care. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. Analysis of dental calculus, the hardened plaque that builds up on teeth over time and preserves chemical information about diet and oral hygiene, has found evidence in ancient human teeth of plant material consistent with deliberate use as dental cleaning agents. The use of toothpicks made from plant stems or stiff grass to clean between teeth is documented archaeologically at multiple sites. Tooth wear patterns in ancient human populations are consistent with the regular use of abrasive plant material to clean tooth surfaces. Ancient humans were cleaning their teeth. Not with a toothbrush and fluoride toothpaste, obviously, but with the tools their environment provided, applied with deliberate attention to cleaning a specific part of the body. The second line of evidence is the use of ochre. Red ochre, iron oxide mineral pigment, appears at ancient human sites going back at least 100,000 years and in some research possibly much further. It was used for cave painting and body decoration. But researchers have also noted that ochre has genuine antiseptic properties that would help preserve animal skins, and potentially had useful effects on human skin as well. Some ancient ochre use may have served as a skin treatment with hygienic as well as decorative purposes. The third line of evidence is the structure of ancient campsites themselves. Archaeological analysis of ancient human living sites shows consistent patterns of spatial organization. Sleeping areas separated from areas used for processing food, waste disposed of away from the central living space, fire positioned in ways that would provide both warmth and smoke that would reduce insect presence. These are hygienic behaviors expressed through spatial organization. Arrangements that reduced parasite and disease risk through deliberate management of the living environment, even when the individuals involved had no scientific understanding of why those arrangements were beneficial. Ancient humans didn't build sewage systems, but they did, consistently and across geographically separated populations, defecate away from their sleeping and eating areas. The same impulse, keep waste away from where you live, just expressed with the tools available. Now let's address the question that is sitting in the back of everyone's mind throughout this entire video. Did they smell bad? The honest answer requires separating several different things that we tend to collapse into a single question. Did ancient humans smell different from modern humans who shower daily? Almost certainly yes. Different diet, different skin microbiome, different levels of accumulated material on the body, different exposure to smoke and animal matter in soil, all of these would have produced a smell profile that a modern person, accustomed to the heavily deodorized environment we inhabit, would probably find challenging. Did ancient humans smell worse than modern humans who don't shower? Here the answer is more complicated and more surprising. Research into the skin microbiome, the community of bacteria that live on human skin and are responsible for body odor, suggests that the microbiome of people eating traditional diets without processed foods is significantly different from the microbiome of modern people eating industrial diets. The bacteria that produce the most unpleasant odors are fed specifically by compounds more prevalent in modern diets. An ancient human eating wild food had a different microbial community on their skin, producing a different and possibly less offensive odor signature than a modern person eating a modern diet and skipping showers for a week. Did ancient humans care about smell? Yes, but differently than we do. They cared about it in the context of hunting. Managing their odor was a practical hunting concern. They cared about it in the context of social signaling. Body odor carries genuine information about health, reproductive status, genetic compatibility, and stress. And ancient humans were almost certainly paying attention to those signals in ways that modern deodorized people are less equipped to. and some evidence suggests they cared about it in a general social context. Certain hunter-gatherer groups studied by anthropologists have explicit social norms around odor, with expectations that adult men in particular should maintain a relatively neutral or mild scent as a marker of social standing. What ancient humans did not have was the modern, civilization-driven framework in which the complete elimination of body odor through artificial means is the standard expectation, and anything less is a social failure. That framework is new. It is the product of marketing, urbanization, and the specific social dynamics of dense, anonymous, civilized populations, not a universal human standard that transcends time and culture. Here is the perspective shift that all of this builds toward. We imagine ancient humans as dirty, smelly, indifferent to their own bodies in ways that mark them as fundamentally other. As creatures separated from us by the unbridgeable gap of civilization and all the tools it brought. The evidence doesn't support that image. Ancient humans groomed themselves and each other every day, driven by evolutionary instincts that are as old as the primate lineage. They cleaned their teeth with plant materials. They managed their body odor for practical hunting reasons. They organized their living spaces to separate sleeping areas from waste. They used mineral pigments and plant substances on their skin in ways that served both decorative and potentially protective functions. Their bodies, eating a traditional diet, produced a significantly different odor profile than what we might imagine projecting our modern biology onto them. Were they clean by modern standards? No. Unambiguously, and obviously no. The tools didn't exist. The infrastructure didn't exist. The specific cultural framework that defines modern cleanliness didn't exist. An ancient human transported to a modern bathroom would have found the entire concept of a shower alien, and possibly alarming. But they were not indifferent to their bodies. They were not blissfully wallowing in filth with no awareness that filth was a thing to be managed. They had instincts, practices, tools, and social norms around bodily maintenance that were sophisticated for the world they lived in, and that reflected genuine evolutionary intelligence about the relationship between body care and survival. The line from an ancient human picking parasites from a group member's hair at a campfire 100,000 years ago to a modern person standing in a shower before work is longer and more winding than we might think, but it is a continuous line. The same instinct, the same awareness of the body as something that requires care and maintenance, just expressed with completely different tools across an enormous stretch of time. Hygiene didn't begin with civilization, it began with us, a very long time before any of the rest of it arrived.